with the right mechanics, with the right equipment, you're going to catch a few more fish, hook a few more fish, and get a few more fish in the boat. So first we're going to talk about the rod. A lot of guys like a lot of different rods. I use a 7-foot medium heavy rod. I like a long handle. Rod should have a pretty heavy backbone, but still a relatively light tip. Now you need a relatively light tip so you can cast this bait, because a spinnerbait is a target bait. You're always casting, right? It's not like a jig. Like a jig, you'd want a little stiffer rod where you're pitching and flipping and doing things like that, where you want a pretty stiff tip. With a spinnerbait, you want a limber tip, and that'll help you be able to cast the bait a little better. You want a pretty good backbone, because a spinnerbait has a single hook. Okay, so when that fish bites, when you feel the pressure of that fish, you want to be able to set into that fish and drive the hook into the fish's mouth. Okay, so you can fish into the boat. For guys that like to cast around docks, little short cast, underneath things, a pistol grip handle works really well. But for me, I've kind of developed the technique, and I could talk about these casts, is I do a little roll cast, and I hold it with 2 hands. Let's see if I can do this without hitting it, whacking anybody. You good catch? And what I do is all I do is just roll it like this, okay? And I put this hand back here, and I just kind of exaggerate that roll with this hand. When I get right about here, I push it, and it makes that bait fly flat and up underneath. So you can get up underneath docks and underneath trees and underneath a lot of that stuff. So that's why I like a 2-handle rod. And plus, when you're fishing throughout the day, throwing spinnerbait all day or throwing a rip bait or whatever you're throwing, your arm's going to get a little tired. It makes it nice to have a little rest to go off of 2 hands and swing it like that. So you want to make sure it's a light rod. You want it pretty sensitive so you know what's going on with the bait, with the fish. This one is a 7-foot medium heavy St. Croix rod. I actually pulled it off the shelf. Looked like a perfect rod to throw a spinnerbait with. Has a nice parabolic bend. See, you want it with a spinnerbait rod, you want it to bend like this. With a crankbait rod, you would want to be able to have it bend all the way around. With a spinnerbait rod, you want to have it bend like this. So when, like I said, talked about the backbone, when you get into that backbone, you can get into fish. This is the Suffix DNA line right here. This is a platinum color. They make a platinum, a green, and a clear blue fluorescent. Okay. Now this line, like most conventional lines on the market, Big Game, XT, XL, Strand, all those lines have like 35 to 60% stretch, okay, which is a lot, right? Suffix is 25 to 35%. So it's a lot less stretch. So what less stretch gives you is more sensitivity and a better hook set. Because the lower the stretch, the better sensitivity the line has. Like, anybody ever use braid? Notice how sensitive braid is. If you fish a worm or a jig with it, on that braid, you can really tell what's going on with it. So that's due to the low stretch. So it'll help you get a few more fish in the boat, that low stretch line. If you throw spinnerbaits in the Delta, don't use anything less than 17-pound test. Nothing. Delta fish are not line shy. Okay, so you don't really have to worry about the line size that much. If you can throw 20, good. The thicker the line, the heavier the pound test, the thicker the line, the more it's going to fluff when you throw it. So it's easier to throw like 8-pound. You could throw that stuff a mile, but when you hook a 5-pounder, it's going to break you off. So 17-pound line is enough where you can still throw it good, thin enough diameter. You can still be able to get the fish in the boat without breaking them off.
You like using the mono or the braided stuff?
Monofilament. Yeah. With spinnerbaits, I throw mono. I do. Problem with braid is that it's just too fast. A lot of times you'll feel the bite, and you could set the hook and actually pull the bait away from the fish. So braid is great for throwing frogs and throwing flukes, and I even drop shot with braid, and I tie a leader onto it. But for spinnerbait throwing, mono works better. Now I like these little Corrado 100s just because they're real nice. They fit my hand real good. They're relatively inexpensive. I think they're like $130, $129, something like that. They're almost bulletproof. I mean, you just put it on. I mean, I have about 15 of them. I just put them on and use them, and every couple of years I pull them out and put some oil in them, and that's good. I like the low profile. 6 to 1. Now, a high gear ratio for me is really important, okay? Now, you can get a 5 to 1 gear ratio if you like to slow roll a bait in 30 foot of water and reel it really slow. But instead of that, I'll just discipline my hand to reel that bait slower, okay? I'll just reel that bait slower rather than having a 5 to 1 reel it fast, because what's going to happen, a lot of times, especially if you get a big one, you get an 8, 9, 10 pounder on, you're not going to be able to keep up with that fish. That fish is going to freight train out, and once you lose contact with that fish, the fish loses contact with the bait, and the bait falls out. So when you get a big bass, like I say, a bass over probably 4 or 5 pounds, the roof of their mouth is extremely hard. I've had a lot of 5 to 10 pound fish come in and they're hooked just like this. Even though I fought them all the way to the boat, you get them in the net, and the bait falls out. It's not, you didn't even penetrate the fish, even with fighting that fish and everything. So I call that tip tension, line tension on the fish is really important. So having a fast reel and be able to keep up with that fish is important. Also, when you're casting and you're out of the strike zone, you want to be able to get your bait back into the boat fast, cast it back out with the line. Suffolk makes 2 different kinds of line. Tritanium Plus, which I don't think they carry here, which is a super high abrasion resistant line. It's a little bit stiffer than the DNA, okay? But it's cloudy, so that line is cloudy. The DNA is a clear line, okay, so it's less visible in the water. Even though you're using a higher pound test, it's a less visible line than a lot of the other lines in the water because it's clear all the way through. Low light and murky water conditions. This is, I caught about half of the fish on this bait today, actually. This is a 1/2 ounce Persuader, white on white, double willow spinnerbait. Almost all of them I use a double willow. When it gets muddy, I'll use a Colorado willow. If it gets like super chocolate mud, I'm going to use a double Colorado. Okay? And when I do that, I'll throw like black and chartreuse, something real big and gaudy, you know, maybe I'll put orange blades on it or something so these fish can see it. Now, Delta bass need to see your bait. Okay, that's super important. You know, the river's been muddy. I don't know how many of you guys have been fishing this last month out here. Anybody? Just how muddy the water's been. Once you get you start getting out of that muddy water, you start catching fish. You get back into that muddy water, and the bite really slows down. I went out several times when the water's really muddy, and it's like a 2 or 3 fish day, you know, until you find some clear water, and then it gets a lot better. But Delta bass are sight feeders, so they need to see it. Okay, so in low light conditions, dirty water, you want to use painted blades. Okay, and what painted blades do is they make a bigger profile. They make a kind of not a flash, but they make a kind of a profile through the water, and it's bigger than, say, chrome blades or gold blades. Okay, so my theory is that I catch bigger fish on painted blades. Okay, whether it be chartreuse or black or white. Low light conditions, when you're first starting out in the morning, it's good to throw some painted blades. Then as the sun comes up, say you have some clear water, sun comes up, things kind of mellow out, you want to switch up. If it's a real bright sunny day with clear water, I'm going to throw gold or chrome blades, like a shad color bait with chrome blades. Otherwise, if there's any kind of stain in the water, which there usually is here, I'm going to throw gold blades. Gold blades are really important in the Delta, and if you look at, this is one of my favorite baits. If you look at this thing has just caught a gazillion fish, and it's kind of, we nickname it the carp color, okay, because it's kind of goldish carp color, but it's really a southern shad, okay, with gold blades. Now, gold blades are really important. We have a fish here in the Delta called a golden shiner, okay, and they get up to about this big, and they're nice, and they're gold on the side. I mean, they're beautiful gold with orange fins. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take a couple strands of orange and put it in my skirt. Then it kind of looks like that fish. We also have a lot of other bait fish too.
So the gold you use in stained water, you said?
Use gold in stained water. Yeah, most of the time I'm going to be throwing gold here. I rarely throw silver. You know, sometimes, like if you're in Little Mandeville or Frank's Track or in the break, some places that get, when the water gets super clear, you know, and you can see like 6 feet, I'll throw like a shad with chrome blades. You'll notice also when you throw like shad and chrome blades, usually your fish size goes down a little bit. When you get colored blades, gold blades, start using some off colors, usually your fish size will go up a little bit. There's a bunch of schools of thought on color, you know, like, I'll elaborate a little more, but we'll go on colors for seasons, okay? Early seasons, like now through probably about the end of May, these fish are feeding on crawdads, okay? They're going to feed on bait fish, but their primary forage is crawdads. Has protein and the nutrients to get them through the spawn, through that couple of weeks of rigorous labor that they're performing, and without eating, it helps them get through that. After that, they're going to be into the bluegill, crappie, brim phase, okay? So we're going to start off with craw colors. We're going to work into like chartreuse and blue. Then when we work into summer and fall, we're going to go into the shad colors. White, shad colors, the southern shad, things like that, okay? So that's one school of thought, colors for your season. There's also colors to match the color of the water, okay? Today the water was a little murky. Some places it was clear. When the water was murky, I was throwing this bait, actually, this one that's tied on. When the water was murky, I was throwing this one, okay, and this one. When the water's a little murky, 1 second, okay. Then, when it cleared up, I was throwing this one. That's the 3 that I caught fish on. I tried a bunch of different ones. I tried a black one, an orange one, black and red, blue and chartreuse. But these are the colors that produced today, okay. I primarily throw a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait. 1/2 ounce. If you know, you look at my box, about 90% of them are 1/2 ounce. I feel with a 1/2 ounce I can throw it. I can throw it far enough, even in like a day like today when it was really windy, I could throw it fine. I can slow roll it, get it down as deep as I want, or I can hold my rod tip up and keep the bait up as shallow as I want. Okay, 1/2 ounce is really a versatile bait. If say in the fall time, if I'm fishing outside edge of weed lines and fishing a little bit deeper, I'll go to 3/4. If I go to some of the lakes, I'll throw a 3/4. Now after the spawn, these fish get a little finicky, and a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait works really well then. And I think I have one here. This is actually 3/8, but it's this same bait in 1/4 ounce, and that's real nice. And then I usually don't throw it on 17. I usually throw it on 14 because I need it to go down a little bit deeper. I'm going to throw it really, really slow. There's 2 different blade combos that I generally throw. 3, but 2 that I use for the most part. One I use most of the time is willow. This is what you want to use when the bass feed on sight. Okay, not a whole lot of vibration in the water, a lot of flash. It's a good visual target for these fish. This one has a Colorado willow, still a good visual target, but this Colorado blade spins around a little bit faster and thumps a little bit. So what that does is the fish will detect it in their lateral line, so they can feel it a little bit more. So if the water's a little bit stained, you might want to go to like a Colorado willow rather than a willow. If it's really stained, and I don't have any of my double Colorados, but it would be something like this, but really a bright colored bait. These are just the baits I grabbed out of my box. I usually have a little seminar box with all different colors. Okay, yes sir?
And how about trailers, like plastic trailers?
I generally don't use a plastic trailer. The only reason I would use a plastic trailer is like this.
So you use like yellow on white or white and white?
I would match the color of the spinnerbait, unless it's during the spawn time and I'm just trying to get something really wild, you know, black and pink, or you know, add some pink or something black and white, some with a lot of contrast. During spawn time, you're just trying to make these fish react and bite. So that's when you throw something, you know, a big contrast. But when you're throwing a spinnerbait, most of the time you're trying to imitate a bait fish. So you want something that is looks all the same contrast as the bait. I generally don't use like a grub trailer unless the fish is missing the bait. If the fish is missing the bait, I'm going to switch colors. Like I was throwing that gold one, I was throwing this one today. I had one about 6 pounds first thing come off. About 5 minutes into the day, one about 6 pounds, I watched it come off. I was like, wow, it come off. And then I lost another one, and then I lost another one. I said, wow, something's wrong, right? So then I put on this white one, and I caught one, I think it was about 3.5 pounds, and it was, just buried into the fish. I was like, well, here we go, got it. And so then I caught another one that's about 7 pounds, and it was hooked really good. I said, well, that was the whole difference. I just changed colors. These fish react differently on it, bite it different, okay? And now I'm hooking them instead of not hooking them. Because sometimes the fish will come up and engulf the whole bait, or maybe they'll grab it one way or grab it another way, and the color will dictate how they bite. Kind of funny, but that's how it works.
Do you pick up vibration, or?
What's that? They see it.
In the muddy water?
They do. Well, they will pick up the vibration in the muddy water, but my feeling is that Delta bass don't usually use their lateral lines nearly, not like the Mississippi bass when the water's all muddy back there. We're talking about trailers. And then when I'm missing fish, I might put a grub on here. My color selection, if I keep switching up colors and I'm still not getting them to eat it, they're still not eating it good, I'll put a grub trailer on it, and a lot of times that'll help these fish get up on it and get hooked up better. To answer your question. A little story. I fished the Bassmaster tournament at Columbia River late last year, and I was watching these big giant smallmouth, you know, like up to 4 or 5 pounds, come up and just annihilate my spinnerbait, and I can't hook them. I mean, they're just coming up and just whacking it. Wham! I'm watching them, you know, like 2 to 4 pounders come up and just whack it. Nothing. I'm like, damn, I'm not getting them. You know, this is in practice, of course. And so I said, you know, it's got to be something wrong. I said, I'm going to put a trailer hook on it. This one, I'll knock while I was over. This one I cut the bottom hook off, and I'll go into that. What you want to do is you get a number 2 EWG treble hook, okay? Now you don't use this around the weeds because it doesn't work good. Around the weeds I don't use any trailer hook at all, or any trailer hook really at all. And you're going to hook this thing, you get a little piece of circle tubing, slide it over, you put this thing on like this. Now, instead of watching these smallies come up and slam it, I'm catching them. But I'm catching them anywhere but in the mouth. In the back, in the head, in the tail. These smallmouth are just coming up and I'm just crashing it, trying to kill it. And boom! And it's like, so now I'm hooking them all over the place. You know, so I'm getting these 2 and 3. I caught 2 like 4 pounders. In practice, I said, all right, this is great.
So what do you do? You put the hook through the eye? And sort of,
I take he's going to bring that other hook out in a second. I just take a piece of surgical tubing, like that, and I slide it right over. Did you find it? You just see, I just keep this. This just stays up in the front of my boat, up by my trolling motor, and I put it right in the carpet. It's always there, okay? So when I fished Lake Havasu a week and a half ago, and was missing a few fish, catching big smallies up there. Caught a couple 4-pounders. That was really cool. And I was so spinnerbait. So I said, hey, you know, I'm fishing smallmouth. I better get on my treble trailer hook. So I just keep it there on my boat all the time. So what I do is I take that piece of surgical tubing, slide it over like that, and I put the hook on. And you have to make sure that that point is down. You want that point down. Doesn't work good in the wood or the weeds or the tulies. Okay, always hangs up. But it works good when these fish come up and crash it. Works good for these smallies and spotted bass here in the Delta too. Works really good for that. So now, if I'm throwing a buzzbait over some stuff that's not too thick, I'll cut the bottom hook off of that treble hook, slide it on my buzzbait like that. Now when a fish comes up and hits a spinnerbait, or a buzzbait, they don't swim up behind it and clamp down on it, not very often. You know, once in a while they'll do that. They usually come up and they slash at it. They'll come up and grab it and turn, okay? Just like that buzzbait bite. You know how many guys have been reeling that buzzbait along? Right? Well, what happens is that fish came up, well, it's hitting a spinnerbait or buzzbait. They hit both the same, except one's on top, one down below. They come up and hit it like this, okay? They're going to hit it like this, close down on it, turn, and try to get away, okay? With a buzzbait, it goes like this, and it turns, right? Splash, dives, you feel a little something, you set the hook, the mouth's not closed yet, right? You pull it out, the bait's gone, fish is gone. Okay? Same thing with a spinnerbait. A lot of times when you're reeling a spinnerbait, you'll feel that thunk, you know, and nothing, you know. You just pulled the bait right out of his mouth because he was still turning. If it's a big one, bless you. If it's a big one, say a 4 or 5 pounder, I mean, they can engulf this whole thing. You know, sometimes you won't even get them because it acts like a weed guard. But you want to wait until you feel a little bit of pressure, then get into them. You can't believe when the Delta's clear, it was really clear, get yourself a good pair of solar back glasses and watch, just make sure, watch your bait. And you won't believe, you can't even imagine how many fish bite your bait that you never saw. Like I caught 40 today, I bet I had 80 bites. I bet, I would bet. I know I had like 10 or 15 that I didn't catch, that I felt them, you know. But a lot of times you'll go down the bank, you know, and I'll do it with clients. And we go down the bank and I'll watch, I'll go, you got bit? No, I didn't. That was a weed. No, it's not. I saw a fish, you know. Maybe even been a little one, but I saw him come out and whack at it. Sometimes they'll come out and just swirl on it and not even get it, you know. But that's a good thing to do, is watch, kind of watch and see how these fish hit. You asked about retrieve, okay? A slow, steady retrieve is good. Right? A fast, steady retrieve is good, and a medium, steady retrieve is good. But you need a little bit something different when you're casting and you're reeling your bait back. You want to. I usually just do a deal like this, and I just pause. I'll reel this thing up, and I do this with the crankbaits. I don't do this with buzzbaits, but I'll reel it back, and I just pause. You don't have to only have to pause for just like a split second. And all you're doing is if that fish is following behind it, you just all of a sudden make those blades flutter, and hopefully you're going to make that fish react on your bait. We do another thing. We throw it out. You throw the bait out, and then you let it sink all the way to the bottom, and then you're going to pull it up, right? Then let it sink back down. Pull it up. Let it sink back down. It's kind of like a yo-yo. The other thing is you can throw it out. This works good in some of these marinas. So where you throw it out in between these weeds and you just work the thing super slow. Just where the blades are barely moving, the thing's kicking up sand and silt down the bottom. You just do it super, super slow. I call that walking the spinnerbait. And that little thing when we're reeling it back, right? And you stop it a little bit. You can give it, and then you can give it a little. You can kind of give it a little kick like that, and you get those blades moving good, kind of give it a little different action. Also, what works good here is burning the spinnerbait. Now, you know, all those guys talk about it back east, Van Dam, and all those guys talk about burning the spinnerbait. But I tell you, it works good here. The water's got to be relatively clear, but it works really good. One thing you want to do is make sure you have a follow-up bait, because the fish miss it, and you get to see them. You know, you get to see these 4, 5, 6 pounders. You'll be burning your spinnerbait, and they'll come up and go whoosh, and miss it. And you want to make sure you have like a helix or Senko or, you know, jig or worm or something that you can throw back on those fish, because they'll usually stay right there. Guys had that? Because you know what? And you can do that whether you throw, and I do that with a crankbait. I'll throw a follow-up bait on a crankbait, spinnerbait, buzzbait, top water. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what kind of bait you're throwing. You can throw a jig and get bit and miss it. We'll throw another bait in there because that fish just told you that there's a fish in there, right? So one thing about throwing a follow-up bait, so you burn a spinnerbait and you miss a fish, that fish is going to stay in that area for at least, you know, 20 seconds or so. So make sure you throw back out. A lot of times I'll try to match the color of the bait that I'm throwing, and I throw Doc Waters Helix, and they make one that looks just about like this. It's my favorite one. And when I'm burning that thing and they miss it, I'm going to throw that out. And the key to catching those fish that miss your bait, okay, throw it out and just let it sit. Let it fall on a slack line, let the bait sit. Just let it sit there for like a minute. It's really hard to do. I have really a hard time with clients having them do that, you know. I'm like, throw it out right there. Okay, now let it sit. And you can see they just want to reel. I'm like, no, don't reel. Don't reel, you know. You just watch the line. When the line starts moving or you've gone through a minute or so, then reel it back in. But if you throw out on a fish that missed your bait, if you throw it out there and do like this, it's too late. You're not going to get that fish. 90% of the time, you're not going to get that fish. But if you throw it out and let it sit, good chance you will get that fish to bite again.
Is that because he thinks maybe he can?
If you want to take your willow leaf blade and get some more vibration out of it, all you got to do is take it and just put it on the deck of your boat. You guys see back there? Take it down, and you're just going to push on it like this. Just flatten that blade out. Flatten both of them out. Now, now you look, you can see the difference. I just took this blade, and all I did was push my thumbs in the center of this blade and flatten it out. Now what this blade is going to do, this blade's going to go like this through the water, right? The flat blade is going to go like this. Now if you go to Worth, which is a blade company, to get those flat blades, they put a little fish on them. They charge you a lot extra. They put a little fish on there. So, but really all you got to do is like put your thumbs in there, flatten it right out. Gives it a lot more vibration. So these assassinators, I think they work good right out of the box, but sometimes fish aren't, you know, you're not going to get them to react right, so you got to do a little bit something different. So that'll give you a little more vibration. Add colors, I talked about that, about adding a little orange to it. Orange is really a good color in the Delta because those golden shiners have orange fins on the bottom. You guys seen them? I actually have a picture. I had to put it up on my website, but it's nice. It's all gold with the little orange fins. Now, two different knots I use. One, I usually use a Palomar just because it's super easy. Okay. The other is the improved clinch. The reason you tie improved clinch is, actually I'll tie it. Now with the Palomar, you could see this. I'll pass it around. You can see that there's a tag end hanging out. Okay? Improved clinch is like a trilene knot. A little harder to tie on a spinnerbait. You loop it around, okay? Then you go around. Then you take the tag end, you loop it around 5 times with mono, 7 times with braid. Anybody know why you go 7 times with braid rather than 5? There you go.
Do you ever use attractants like the spray-on stuff?
I do, but not on reaction baits. All I'm trying to do with a reaction bait is usually try to find fish. You know, I mean, if you can get the good quality fish to bite, then great. But all right, now if you look at this one, you see the tag end that's hanging out the bottom. What that does now, when you're going through the weeds, especially that slimy black stuff, it usually slides right off because that slimy stuff will get caught right in that little, right where your line V's at the top. If you tie a Palomar, those little weeds get caught in there. So that knot takes a little longer to tie, but it'll get you less weeds in there in the end. And weeds will kind of mess up your action, especially if you're throwing a little crankbait. Little weeds will really mess it up. Spinnerbait doesn't really affect it that much, but it's nice to have it come back clean. How many of you guys get snags? How many of you guys snag up your lures? What? Yeah? What? Okay. All right, well, this will be good for you, bad for Gary. I'm going to show you how to get some snags out. Okay. Here, step on this, will you? Alright. Now you're snagged, right? Snagged in a rock or whatever. Don't let go, because it'll whack me. Alright. Yeah. Now here's one way to get them out, okay? Is you're going to just pull it like this, okay? Just like a bow and arrow. Just like that. And you'd be surprised, you probably get half of them out like that. So rather than going all the way up in the rocks or whatever, getting it out, just, and if it doesn't work like that, do it harder. You could do it a couple times. Now what it does is it stretches your fish line and then pulls it back and shocks it. Kind of shocks the bait, and it comes out a lot. Now, secondly, you can let go. All right, now, you, sir, can you step on that for me? Here's the next one. You're a little closer, right? This is the cool guy one. All right, you're a little closer, but so you don't have to. But you can't quite get in there. You just drop your rod, hang on to it, right? Pull it in, You pop the rod tip all the way down to the bait, just like that. Boom, pull it out, comes out. Get a lot of them out. Plus, it looks pretty cool. You know, once you get the hang of it, first couple times you look pretty silly, you know. But once you get it down, you do the little deal and you throw it down there and throw it out, and guys go, "Wow, what'd you do?" I was just getting a snag out. You know. I showed Randy Pringle that one, and we were out fishing one day, and he did that, right? He puts his rod down there, and he does this deal and sticks it down there, and he goes, this rod stuck in the rocks. I'm still going. I see him, you know, but I'm not saying anything. I'm still going. He goes, hey, I'm stuck. He's like rip and drag out. His rod's going into the water. That was funny. Had to be there, but it was pretty comical. He was swearing and cussing at me. It was funny.
On the bottom, I mean, how fast is a half-ounce ball versus how fast a three-quarter-ounce ball? You always fishing this stuff right on the bottom, like you're talking about?
No. Usually when you're fishing a spinnerbait, you're up off the bottom. Generally, you know, say the average Delta bass lives in 2 to 4 foot of water. So most of the time you're fishing that 2 to 3 foot water column with the spinnerbait. Usually just deep enough where you can't see it. So the heavier the bait, the faster you have to reel it, or the same, if you reel it the same, it'll run deeper. Now there's times in the Delta, especially in the fall and post-spawn, where these fish will get deeper out in the outside edge of the weed line and things like that, where you'll want to use a heavier spinnerbait and run on the outside edge.
How often do you sharpen your hook?
Like today I didn't do it at all, but when I'm fishing a tournament, all the time. I always check it, and the way you check it is with your thumb. I'll put my thumb on it, I'll put it into my thumb, and if it slides, like this one slides, it's dull. You should be able to just go like that, and it should stick and stay. Then you know it's nice and sharp. It's like I was talking about those big fish, especially fish over 5 pounds, they have a really hard mouth. If that hook's not sharp, you're not going to get it into them. Most of the casting I do is an underhand roll cast. I do pitch it. If I'm going to be pitching a lot, I'm going to throw a single blade spinnerbait. I have a couple of them in here. I think. 2 blades take a lot longer to get started than 1 blade, okay? Because the front blade takes water away from the back blade. So if you use one single blade, when you throw it in there, the blade starts moving right away, okay? If you're pitching real shallow, you might want to throw this is a 3/4 ounce. So this would be good. I use this for pitching like bluffs and rocks and things like for smallmouth in some of the lakes like Havasu and things like that, where you have shadows and deep places where I'm going to pitch it up and then I want it to fall pretty fast. So you can use this same blade like with a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait. We can pitch it up there and and the blade will start moving right away. You need this blade to start turning for this thing to work. Just like a buzzbait, you need a buzzbait on top of the water to start working.
About a 4 or 4.5 blade?
Yeah, this is like about a 4. I think it's about a 5, actually. So I'll probably put like a number 5 on a 1/2 ounce. Would be a good combination. You want to make sure that that when you collapse the spinnerbait, that you have a hook. That when you collapse the wire, you have a hook. Like sometimes the wire will be back over the hook. You want it before the hook. So if a fish clamps down on the whole thing, you'll be able to get them. Because I was going down the bank today going, oh man, I'm going the wrong way. I'm going down the bank. I'm blowing with the current. The wind's blowing behind me. I'm going down about 10 miles an hour. I'm going the wrong way. I said, but I want to go down there anyway, so I just kept going, and I caught like 6 fish down the bank going the wrong way. My theory is that bait fish swim both ways, okay? So it doesn't matter if you're throwing a reaction bait, which way you're going. Now, if you're going into the current, it's a little easier to present your bait, and you can present it multiple times to the same target. If you're going with the current, you have one shot at getting that piece of structure, and that's it. If you don't hit it, you're past it, and then you either turn around or, go on to the next one.